Hello and welcome to Wide Angle. Near abroad, in Saudi Arabia, we've just had an important visit by President Obama, who in fact left yesterday. The ripple effects from this particular visit are going to be felt all over. And we in India will also receive some of the waves when they lap at our shores. To discuss or at least take a look at what might have happened. We do not yet know. The Saudis are very secretive, and even the Americans are, in deference to their secrecy, also not as forthcoming as they generally are. So the news will filter through over a period of days, weeks and months. Meanwhile, what is the score? We have General Hasnain, who has a keen eye. He's just returned from Kashmir, in fact, and he has been keeping a steady watch on all areas of strategic interest, and this is one of them. Then we have Awwad, who in fact I am in some doubt whether he is more Arab than Indian, having lived most of his life here. How long have you been here?
I complete the full circuit of the life, if you call it.
But you've been here 20 years or so, no?
30 plus.
Right. Saudis and the Americans have had the most uncomplicated relationship for many years. In fact, let us kick the ball rolling. In 1943, there's a famous meeting in Washington, D.C. President, the war is on. We have thrown our lot. In fact, 43 was a very strange year because we'd gone and quit India. We thought that the other side was winning. Yes. And you have Lord Halifax, the British ambassador, and Roosevelt. They're looking at the map of West Asia. And Roosevelt says, and I'm quoting exactly, Persian oil is yours, that is to Britain. Kuwaiti and Iraqi oil we share. Saudi oil is ours. That was 43. And in 1945, you know that with King Saud of Saudi Arabia, the deal was signed with Roosevelt on that ship. So it goes back, it's very cavernous. I've spoken to people in very high office in Washington. I say, why can't you do something about terrorism if emanating from there? They say, we can do nothing. It's a very deep, abiding relationship. Now, that relationship has in the last few years run into rough weather. That rough weather is indicative of a changing world order. Let us pick up the narrative from there. Ata, why don't you kick it off?
Thank you, Saeed bhai. Let me start by saying, first of all, that we talk of the New World Order. And most people imagine that a New World Order post the Cold War, post the breakup of the Soviet Union, will probably emerge in 5 or 6 years. They have realized that 25 years down the line now, nothing really has emerged. And possibly 25 years later, nothing is going to emerge. So it's all a very dynamic process which is taking place. Having said that, the Saudi-US relationship of which you just spoke has been one of the world's very, very strong strategic partnerships. And we are seeing, for the first time after many years, some kind of a dilution. I would start by saying that perhaps this happened, the process of this dilution commenced from sometime around 2003, when there was a clash of interests as to how to handle post-war Baghdad and post-war Gulf, the post-war Iraq region. And then it came on to sometime around the year 2009 and 10, when you found the first signals of the Arab Spring emerging in the Middle East or West Asia. I think that got the Saudi tentacles up, because this was running counter to their interests.
Awwad, what the general is saying, you might like to come in here. He says that the Saudis were a little, according to me, they were a little ambivalent. They wanted Saddam Hussein out, but they didn't want Shia power to come up. Now, there was a little contradiction there, wasn't there?
Well, it is height of contrast. You have, in your introduction, you touch a very important point, which was the Aramco deal between the American and the Saudi oil company, which has already cemented the relation between the two nations for 50 years. And if you remember the second Gulf War, it was created, the second Gulf War of liberation of Kuwait, for the reason and the pretext of signing another deal for the next 50 years, one, and B, also to ensure that there are military bases for the United States in the whole of GCC. And they have achieved both the goals, and they removed Saddam Hussein later on in 2003. So these are the issues. The American will always follow their interest in the region, and they have been doing so. And they have not denied this even to the USSR when they told them that we are ready to use the nuclear weapon if our interest in the Gulf, or if you think that you can take our interest in the Gulf, we are going to take on you. So therefore, the American already made their strategic assets in the Gulf state, especially in relation with Saudi Arabia. But the last few years, yes, there was some kind of resentment in the policy in the American there for two reasons: the shale oil business, which the American is talking about.
Yes.
Then they wanted to keep the tension high in the region, because unless and until you have the petrol in the barrel more than $100, there is no point of digging for the shale oil. So therefore, keeping the uncertainty within the Gulf state also served the American internal policy, where they may not think that they will be more dependent on the Gulf oil, but nevertheless they have always been saying that they will be closing the tab for the other nations like
Now
China, Korea, Japan and India to use these oils.
Extremely useful background, but if we could bring the narrative, we fast forward a little bit, because it is true what you've said, and you laid the sound foundation. What has happened is the following. The king was convalescing in hospital in Europe. Suddenly, Ben Ali went in Tunis, and Hosni Mubarak, who had kept the lid on everything, on the Muslim Brotherhood and the works, was gone. He came out, he could not recognize the West Asia. He had left while he was in hospital. And he swore, and it is record, that no sheikhdom and kingdom will fall, number one. And then the leaks in the papers were, let us get some of them also. In other words, during the Cold War, there were some regimes which were on the other side. Libya was, Syria was, Iraq had already been accounted for. Therefore, first Libya went, and then Syria. And this is where the narrative has to be hinged. Syria, at this point in time, is the basic point of contention.
Actually, very correctly assessed, Saeed Bhai. The point is the future of the Arab Spring itself hinges upon what happens in Syria. The Arab Spring in Tunisia, okay, succeeded. In Egypt, to an extent, but counter to Saudi interests, as we are aware. What has happened in Syria now is a conflict of interest between Iran and Saudi Arabia, manifesting into the traditional, the age-old conflict between the Shias and the Sunnis, which is now being played out in the Middle East. In this, I think it was a natural presumption which the Saudis took, that the Americans would be on their side, and which they have been on their side all along, pushing for the rebels primarily. But I think the entry of Iran and the issue of Iran's nuclear assets has now taken a completely different turn. The Americans realized that they had to now play up to Iran to some extent. They could not push Iran completely into the other side, forcing them into the nuclear realm completely. Some kind of an understanding had to take place, and they wilted under pressure from Putin only 6 months ago, agreeing and accepting that they would not take any military action against the Syrians. I think this is what really put off the Saudis at that time, because this ran completely counter to their interests.
I think the visit, we can look at it, what the categories, or what are the priority for the United States visit onto Saudi Arabia. First of all is to put the house, the Al Saud house, in order, where they are worried about the successor of the king, and therefore the American has been worried for the last 6 months who could be the successor of the king, and that's why even the king issued a new fatwa.
I was hoping that we take this issue a little later.
All right, and I'm just putting the categories.
Now that you've raised it, the issue here is the following. who is Prince Mukrim? I mean, he is the youngest of the son of Al Saud, who is alive. And he's only 70. So you see, in Saudi Arabia, in that hierarchy, if you're 70, you're a bouncy young man. So therefore, he has been inserted as a deputy crown prince, which is unheard of.
The most intelligent part on this, if you notice what was the issue, the degree issued by the king was that this is irrefutable, which means nobody can intervene, even no objection to his suggestions, because this goes against the Al Saud family and the Duseri family, which is already from the mother's side. This is not the real blood brother of the successor of Al Saud family, which also will create a rift within the Yemenis, origin of the Saudis, and the Al Saud of this issue. But I am trying to come back to the issue of Iran and Syria, where the American even forgot to discuss the issue of a human rights issue in Saudi Arabia. And even they said it yesterday, because the two issues took over, we could not talk the human rights issue in Saudi Arabia. Therefore, the American will be blinded when their interest comes first, and the rest of the issues is put in the dustbin. Therefore, they don't care for the other. So where
well, I mean, everyone in international affairs, everyone pursues his or her national interests, and the Americans are relentless in doing just that.
But
sometimes
they are the king of
they tread
human
on
rights.
your corns and you don't like it. Now, General, there was once upon a time another contradiction. That contradiction was between the Saudis and the Qataris. That was one country in the GCC area which was not listening to the Saudis. Then they were brought in. And they were brought in for a simple reason. Look, Arab Spring is coming unless we hang together. So let us pool our resources together. The resources they most needed was the credibility of the electronic media. Western electronic media had collapsed, having been exhausted in propaganda. Every war, if we are fighting a war, General, and you are leading it, this Doordarshan will become part of the propaganda. You can't help it.
Part of the information.